Hey, this is Toby. In this video I'll show you how to code a very simple stochastic EA in mql5, and in the end of the video we will also do some backtesting to see how the strategy performs over the last 10 years. Okay, let's go. Okay, so this is here the equity graph of this EA of the last 10 years. We will do some backtesting in the end of the video. But before we start coding now, I just want to show you the general strategy idea on the chart. So I think everyone knows the stochastic indicator. So let me just put this oscillator here on the chart with the default settings. And yeah, our EA should take a buy trade whenever the stochastic crosses the lower level, and we would take a sell trade when the stochastic crosses this upper level. So for example, here would be a sell entry, here would be a buy entry, and maybe also here. But by just looking at the chart, your brain nearly always tricks you to only see the good trades, because we can also see here, for example, that this one here would be a losing trade. So the only way to really see if an idea is working is to just code it and let it run with a proper backtest. Okay, so that's what we are doing now, and let's switch to Visual Studio Code and we start coding. Okay, now to code this EA, I will use Visual Studio Code. I've also made a video about how to use Visual Studio Code for your mql5 projects here on the channel. I will link it up here. But to create the file, I will use the default meta editor, and I will create the EA here in my YouTube folder. So I will just click here on new, Expert Advisor template, next, and let's name this EA just Stochastic EA. And then I just click on next, next, and finish. Okay, now we have this file here, and I will now close the meta editor. Of course, you can code here in the default meta editor, but I prefer to use Visual Studio Code. So I will open up the file here in Visual Studio Code now, Stochastic EA, and I will also click here compile just to make sure we have a working EA. Okay, so now the next step is to clean up the code a little bit. I just removed this comment up here. So we just start with the properties, add some space here, get this to the right, also delete these comments here. This is of course not important for the program to compile or to run, but yeah, I just don't like the formatting here. So we have the onInit function here, the onDinit function, and the onTick function. These are the three main functions we have already in our template. And I will also delete this last comment line here. Okay, so now it looks a lot cleaner and we can start coding. Okay, so first we want to create another comment section where we put our includes statements. So let's rename this to include. And yeah, there's basically only one file we need to include, which is the ctrade class. So we can write hashtag include and then trade /trade.mqh. Okay, and let's also compile again to make sure we have no mistakes. Okay, next step is to write the section for the inputs for our EA. So I will just create another comment here, and let's call this inputs. So of course we want to start with the general inputs. So we can write here input group just to add a divider basically, or description. So I will call this section here general, maybe like this. And yeah, the first input here is for our magic number. So input of, or we can also do this a static input, because we don't need to optimize this parameter, and of type long. Let's call this input magic number. And let's also set this to a default value, just a random number here. And We also write a comment maybe. Magic number. Okay, the next general input, also static input, this time of type double for our lot size. So input lot size, and by default, let's set this to 0.01. And let's also write a comment lot size. Okay, let's compile. So let's continue with the next input section here. I will just copy this and rename this to trading. So here we will have all our inputs for stop loss and take profit and so on. So first input of type integer is our stop loss. For now we will use a simple stop loss and take profit in points. So input stop loss, a default value of maybe 200 for the stop loss, and also a comment here, stop loss in points. We will do the same for the take profit. So input take profit, and the default value here maybe is 0, so no take profit. Yeah, we can also specify this, that 0 means no take profit, and maybe also no stop loss. So stop loss in points, and then just 0 equals off. And here take profit in points and 0 equals off. Okay, like this. Let's compile again. No mistakes. And we also want one more input here in this trading input section of type Boolean. And here we want an input to basically switch if we want to close the trades on a opposite signal. So let's call this input maybe just close signal, and let's set this by default to false. And let's also write a comment, close trades by opposite signal. Okay, let's compile again. Okay, the next section will be the inputs for our stochastic indicator. So let's rename this to stochastic. And the first input here is our period. So input of type integer, input k period. Because if you look at the stochastic indicator, we can see we have different period inputs. So the k period and the d period. And we also have here this slowing input. Of course, we could add a price field input and a method input, but maybe we just go and use the k period as an input and set everything else to a fixed value. So this just reduces the number of inputs and reduces the chance that we over optimize the EA. So the k period is of course something we need. And let's set this to a default value of 21. Let's also write a comment here, k period, and another input maybe for the levels of the stochastic indicator. So here the levels by default I think are 80 and 20, and that's maybe also something we could have as an input. Okay, so input of type integer, this is enough. We don't need a double. So input, and let's just call this upper level. This will specify the upper level, of course, of the indicator, and we will calculate the lower level from this upper level value. So just 100, and we subtract the upper level to get the lower level, and this way we only have one input. Okay, so we set this by default to 80, and let's also write a comment here, upper level. Okay, let's compile again. Okay, so this of course is level here. And yeah, I think that's it for the inputs for now. Maybe we will add more inputs and filters in the next parts, but let's start with this simple EA and with these inputs here. So let's switch to MetaTrader and let's see how the inputs look here in the strategy tester. So select your EA and then here go to the input tab of the strategy tester, and here we can see all our inputs. So general, magic number, lot size, trading, or stop loss take profit. This boolean here to switch on if we want to close the trades on a opposite signal, and the inputs for the stochastic. For now we just have the K period and the level. Okay, so that's it for the inputs. Let's continue with the global variables. Okay, so let's create another comment section here after our inputs, and let's name this global variables. So here we will just declare a few variables we need on the global scope. So the first one here is our integer handle for the stochastic indicator. Next one is of type double, and this is the buffer. So the indicator values we get from this handle. Let's call this buffer main, and this is a dynamic array. And the next one is mql or of mql tick type, because I always like to store the current tick of the symbol in a variable, so I have access to the price and time at each tick. So let's name this just maybe CT for current tick. And one last variable we need is from the cTrade class a object here. So let's just call this trade. We use this object here to open and close positions. Okay, so these are the four global variables we need. Let's compile again. Make sure we have no mistakes here in our code. And now we can continue with the onInit function. Oh, and in case you're wondering why we only use one buffer for the stochastic indicator, the buffer main, because if we take a look on the chart again, we can see the stochastic has two buffers. If I also bring up the data window, we can see here the stochastic has two buffers, the main buffer and the signal line. But for this EA, we will just set the signal line to the same value as the main buffer line by just setting the D period to 1, because we only need the values of the main buffer. So that's why we only have here one indicator buffer. Okay, but now let's continue with the onInit function here. So here the first step is to check the user inputs. You know how I do this when you watch some of my EAs. So we can just write a simple comment here, check user inputs, and with a simple if statement here and a function called check inputs. We just make sure that the user inputs make sense and are in the allowed range basically. So if this function here returns false, we also want to return here init parameters incorrect. And we will write this function in a few seconds, but for now let's just comment this line out here so we can finish the onInit function without any mistakes. Next step here is to set the magic number to the trade object. So let's also write a comment here, set magic number to trade object. So for this there's a function trade.set expert magic number, and of course we just use our input magic number here. Okay, next step is to create the indicator handle in the onInit here. So we also write a comment create indicator handle, and we just use our global variable handle here and set this to the function I stochastic. This is a predefined function from MetaTrader we can use, so we don't have to write a custom stochastic indicator. And the first parameter here is the symbol, so we can just type underscore symbol for the current symbol, and next one the period. Yeah, we just use the period current, and now the K period. Here we will use our input, of course, input K period. Now the D period for the stochastic, as I said, we will just set this to 1 because we don't need a signal line. And yeah, for the slowing value, we will just use the default value of 3. Of course, you could also add a input for this slowing, but I don't think this is necessary. So the next input here is the MA method, and for this we just use the simple mode SMA, simple moving average. Again, here you can add a input to change this from outside, but I will just use a simple moving average. I don't think this will make this much of a difference in the results. And the last input here, the price field. Now for the stochastic indicator, you have two options here, I think high, low, and close, close. Yeah, so we will just use the low and high price field for the calculation. So here we just need to enter, I think it's stochastic, yeah, low, high, and a semicolon. And now we should be able to compile here. So let's see, yeah, without any mistakes. Okay, so the next step is to check if this call here, our creation of the handle, was successful. We can do this with a simple if statement. If the handle is equal to a invalid handle, here we want to print out a message for the user and we want to stop the EA. So here we can just use the alert function maybe to write a message. So let's just say failed to create indicator handle, and we also want to return init failed here. So return init failed. So this way the A will not start when we have an error here. Okay, let's compile again, make sure we have no mistakes. And now the last step here in the init is to set the buffer, our main buffer here, as serious. So there's, yeah, let's also write a comment, set buffer as serious, and there's a function we can use, array set as serious, and here we just use our buffer main and set this to true. Okay, so I think that's it for the onInit function. Let's compile again. And now the next step would be to write this check inputs function here, so we can check our inputs here in the onInit function before we start the EA. Okay, so now let's use this if statement here. And let's write this check inputs function. Let's create another comment section here after the onTick. And let's just call this maybe custom functions. And here we'll write our check inputs function. So of type Boolean. The name is check inputs and no parameters. And in the end here we return true. So now we should be able to compile again without any mistakes. Okay, maybe we also write a comment here for the function. So just checks user input. And now we just need to check every input here with a simple if statement. So we start with if our input magic number is less or equal to 0. In this case, we want to write a message for the user. We can start this message with wrong input and then just magic number below or equal to 0. And also we return false for this check inputs function. And let's just copy this if statement, do the same for the lot size. So input lot size. If the lot size is, of course, 0 or below 0, we want to return false, but also maybe if the lot size is below, above or greater than 10, for example. This, of course, depends. This is just another check you can add to make sure you don't enter a lot size greater than 10, or you can even put this to 1, for example. Okay, and let's also change the message here, wrong input to lot size below equal to 0 or greater 10, return false. Okay, let's copy this again, paste, and the next input is our stop loss. Let's see. Yeah, after lot size is stop loss, take profit, close signal. So input stop loss can be 0 with this EA, but it should not be below 0. So only this, and wrong input, stop loss below 0, and the same for the take profit. Input take profit below 0, wrong input, and take profit below 0. Okay, and then we get the signal input. So input, or do we even need to check this? Probably not, because it's just true or false. But maybe we want to make sure if we don't have a stop loss, this has to be true. So we close the trades at some point. So that's what we can do here. So input close signal is false, and our input stop loss is equal to 0. So we don't have a stop loss, and our input close signal here is false. So I will add this exclamation mark here at the beginning. So this just means if this input here is false and we have no stop loss, we also want to print out this error message. So let's write here close signal is false and no stop loss. Okay, now the next input here is for the stochastic, so the K period and the input for the upper level. Oh, here also we need to write level, of course. Okay, so let's check the period of the indicator. So input K period, this should not be below or equal to 0. Let's also change the message here. K period less or equal to 0, return false. And for the level, we want to make sure that the level is above 50 and below 100, I would say, because that's the upper level. So input upper level, this is below or equal to 50, or for input upper level is greater or equal to 100. Also change the message here. Upper level below equal 50 or greater equal 100. Okay. I think these are all the inputs we have, and with this function we just make sure that the user enters like valid inputs, and if the user enters a not valid input, we don't start the EA. So let's compile to make sure we have no mistakes here in this function, and yeah, I think that's it for now for the onInit function. We check our inputs here with this function now. We set the magic number to our trade object. We get the indicator handle, and then we set our buffer here as serious. And if everything here was successful, we return init succeeded. Okay, let's take a look at the onInit function. Here we only need to release the indicator. So we can write a comment here, release indicator handle, and we check with a simple if statement if our handle here is not a invalid handle. In this case, we can release the indicator. So we can just call the indicator release function here and use our handle. That's all we need to do in the onInit. Let's compile again to make sure we have no mistakes. And now we can take a look at the onTick. Okay, so let's take a look at the onTick function. First of all, here we want to check for a new bar open tick because our EA should only work on bar open ticks. This is better for backtesting, it's more reliable, and yeah, it's also enough for intraday strategies. So let's make a comment here. Check for bar open tick. And to do this, we will use a custom function called isNewBar. I will copy a few functions now from another EA because I already coded this here a few times on the channel. So I will just open the Donchian channel EA here and copy 4 functions. This is the isNewBar function, count open positions function, normalize price, and close positions function. And I will tell you when you can pause the video and code this for yourself if you don't have the Donchian channel EA. If you have the Donchian channel EA, of course, you can just copy and paste them too. And I will paste them here in our EA now after the check inputs function. So here at the end, like this. So let's take a look at the 4 functions. So the first one here is new bar, is to check if we have a new bar open tick. Yeah, you can pause the video now and code this function for yourself. And if you do this, make sure after each function, I would just click compile to make sure I coded this function correctly. And then you start with the next function. So the second one here is the count open positions function. We use this to count the number of open positions for buy and sell. Yeah, pause the video again, code this for yourself, compile, make sure you don't have any mistakes. The next function is normalize price. We use this before we open a trade to normalize the stop loss and take profit price to the tick size of the current symbol. Again, pause the video, code this for yourself, compile, make sure you have no mistake. And the last one here is the close positions function. Yeah, we use this to close the positions when we get an opposite signal. And again, pause the video, code this for yourself, and then compile to make sure you have no mistake. And one more thing, if you code these functions, there's one input here in the close positions function, the input magic number. Just make sure it is the same name as the input of this EA here. So input magic number. And then you should not have any mistakes. Let me also compile here to just make sure we have a working EA. And yeah, let's go back to the onTick function. And now we can use our isNewBar function here and a simple if statement. So if, and then a exclamation mark, is new bar. If this function returns false, which means it's not a new bar open tick, we also just want to return here for this onTick function. And this is a void function, so we don't need to return true or false, we just return. Okay, let's compile again. And now we can do the next step, which is to get the symbol tick. Okay, so let's get the current tick of the symbol. Let's write another comment here, get current tick. And for this, we can just use another if statement here, symbol info tick. And here we need to specify the symbol. So underscore symbol for the current symbol, and our variable we want to store the current tick in. So we have our global variable called CT. And if this function here returns false, we also want to print a message, maybe failed to get current symbol tick. And yeah, we also return here if this function fails. Okay, so now we have the current tick in our global variable CT here. Okay, so let's compile and let's do the next step, which is to get the indicator values. We can also write a comment here. So get indicator values. And to get the indicator values, we will just write an if statement here and use the copy buffer function. So copy buffer, and here we specify the handle, which is our global variable, the buffer number. So the stochastic has 2 buffers, as I said before, and we only need the main buffer, which is buffer number 0, and the start time. Now there are also another version of this function here, start position. That's what we want to use. So the start position is maybe 1, because we are only interested in the previous value, not the current value. And we also set here the number of bars, I think. Yeah, the count. So we only need, let's say we want 2 values to detect a crossover of the upper or lower level with our buffer. And yeah, we store the values here in our buffer main. And if this call here, because this copy buffer function returns a number, and this is the number of copied values, if this is not equal to 2, then we know there is a error in this function and we want to print a message. So we can write here print and failed to get indicator values, and we also want to return in this case. Okay, so that's how we get our indicator values. Let's compile again, make sure we have no mistake here. Okay, next step is to count the number of open positions. So let's also write a comment here, count open positions. And for this, we can use our count open positions function. We copied from the Dontin channel EA. So we also need to declare 2 variables here of type integer, count by, and the second one is count cell. And let's use a simple if statement here and with a exclamation mark and type count open positions. And let's use our 2 variables here, count by and count cell, for the parameters. And if this returns false here, the count open positions function, we also want to return for the onTick function and also want to print a message. So we can just copy this, maybe print this here, failed to count open positions, like this. And then we return. Okay, let's compile just to make sure we have no mistake here. And the next step is already to check for a buy trade, or if you want to open a sell trade. So to do this, we will just write a comment here, check for buy position, and yeah, of course, check here, check for buy position. Here we write a simple if statement, and the first condition to open a buy position is, of course, that we don't have a buy position open right now. So our count buy here has to be 0. And now let's write the condition for the indicator values. So if we take a look at the chart, we want to open a buy position when we cross the lower level of our indicator. So the current indicator value has to be below this level, and the previous indicator value has to be above this level. And then we make sure it's a crossover of the lower level. In this case, we want to buy. Okay, so let's use the buffer main here. Our current value with the index 0 has to be below or equal our lower level. And to get the lower level now, we use 100, subtract our input upper level. If this is, for example, 80, of course, our lower level is then 20. So our buffer 0 has to be below or equal to this level. And let's also check for the value 1. So our buffer main index 1, which is the previous value, has to be greater than our lower level. 100 minus input upper level, just like this. And in this case, we want to open a buy position. So let's just write a simple print statement here. Open buy position. And yeah, let's compile first of all, make sure we have no mistake here. And let's just copy this, do the same for the sell position. So check for sell position. This time we use our count sell position. Yeah, our buffer main has to be greater or equal. This time we can just use our input level here, and the previous indicator value for a sell position has to be below our input upper level, like this. And in this case, we want to open a sell position. So let's compile again, and let's switch to MetaTrader, and let's see if we get this message here for a buy position and this one for a sell position. So I will use the stretch tester here, select the EA of course, select a symbol, time frame, make sure to use the visual mode and the open price only mode. And for the inputs, yeah, use a stop loss. Otherwise you would get a error message, of course, if you don't have a close signal and no stop loss. And I would recommend to use 80 because you cannot change the level of the indicator in the visual mode. But by default, this is set to 80. So let's just use 80 so we can see what we get. And the period is 21 here. I will just start this test. And let's see if we get a message. Let me also shift this a little bit to the left so you can see the latest indicator values. Okay, and I will use F12 here to jump one bar. And we can see we crossed the lower level, but you have to keep in mind that we are looking at the previous value for our buffer 0 value. So this one here is our current candle, but this one here is our buffer 0, and this one here is our buffer 1 value of the indicator here. So we should get a message right now. And let's also take a look maybe at another example, clear this. So no message here because we are looking at this and this value here. But at the next candle, we should get a message and we would open a buy trade here at this open tick of this bar. And let's also take a look at the sell message. So no message here, but at the next bar, we should get the message. Yeah, we do. Open sell position here in the journal tab. And yeah, now we just need to open trades in these if statements instead of these print statements here. But we can see it's working correctly. You can also test your indicator values. If you open here up the data window, you can see the indicator values here of the main line. This is the first one here. If you hover over the chart, and you can also print out the values, of course, of the buffer 0 and buffer 1 index, or just use a comment to put them up here. Okay, but let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's add the trade logic here to open trades. Okay, so maybe we leave these print statements in here. Just for now, we delete them in the end, but let's close all sell positions when we have our input close signal active. So let's do a simple if statement here. If our input close signal is true, in this case, we want to close all sell positions. So we can use another if statement in here with a exclamation mark, and let's call the close positions function with the number 2 to close all sell positions. So 0 would be for all positions, 1 would be for buy positions, and 2 would close all sell positions. And that's what we want. If this call here fails, we also want to return. And yeah, this should close all sell positions here if we have our close signal here active. Make sure you don't miss this exclamation mark here. And the next step is to calculate the stop loss, take profit, and then use this to open a position. So we can just declare a variable here called double SL. And let's just calculate the stop loss in points. So we will use our input stop loss, check if this is 0. We want to set the stop loss variable here to 0, and else we want to set this here to the current tick bid price and subtract our input stop loss value, multiply this by the point value of the symbol. So this will calculate our stop loss in points, and when we have no stop loss, this will just set the stop loss variable here to 0. We do the same for the take profit. So let's change this to input take profit, of course. The take profit is 0. Our take profit variable here is 0. And else, of course, we need to add the take profit to the bid price and multiply this by points. So why we use the bid price here? Of course, we open a buy position at the ask price, but relevant for the stop loss and take profit is then the bid price, because we close the buy positions at the bid price. Okay, now we have the stop loss, take profit calculated. Let's first of all compile to make sure we have no mistakes here in this part of the code. And the next step is to normalize the stop loss and take profit price before we open a position. So we can use another if statement here, exclamation mark, normalize price function. We have down here in our custom functions, right here. And let's just normalize the stop loss here. If this returns false, we also want to return. And let's just copy this and do the same for the take profit. Like this. Okay, now we have our stop loss and take profit ready to take a trade. And to open a trade, we can just use the trade object dot position open, specify the symbol here, the order type, which is order type buy. The volume is our input lot size. The price, our current tick dot ask, and the stop loss and the take profit. And we can also add a order comment here. Yeah, maybe just Stochastic EA, like this. Of course, you can also check if this was successful or not. But for this simple EA, we just open the position here with this call and don't check the return code. Okay, let's do the same for the sell position. First of all, let's compile again to make sure we have no mistakes here. Let's copy this section here, paste this here into this if statement for the sell position, just like this. And yeah, let's see what we need to change. So input close signal, of course, here for the closed positions, we want to close all buy positions. So this would be 1 here. And for our stop loss, we use the ask price here. Also here for the take profit. And of course, we add the stop loss to the ask price for a sell position, and we subtract here the take profit for the sell position. And then we multiply by points. We normalize stop loss take profit. Then we open the position. And here, of course, order type sell. We use our lot size, current tick dot bid this time. And stop loss take profit and the order comment Stochastic EA. Okay, let's compile again to make sure we have no mistakes here. And I think that's it for this EA. Let's see if this already works. Maybe we also, yeah, let's delete these print statements here because we already checked them. And also this one here. Let's compile again. Okay, now before we do a few backtests, let's go through the code once again from the top. So we have our properties, our include here, our inputs here, and our global variables on init function and on the init function where we release the indicator, the onTick function. We check for a new bar, get the latest tick, get the indicator values, count the open positions, and then we check if we want to open a buy position here, and we check if we want to open a sell position here. And down here we have our custom functions, of course, the check inputs, is new bar, count open positions, normalize price, and the close positions function. Okay, so I compile again, and if you are using Visual Studio Code, I would also recommend to compile with the script once here in the end, because this will also reload the EAs in the data folders and in the MetaTrader instance. Okay, so now let's just use these settings here, and let's just start another visual test. Of course, this will not be profitable right now, but let's just see if we open trades here. So we have a crossover of the lower level here in the stochastic indicator, and we can see we opened a buy position and we have a stop loss. We set this to 200. So let's just check if this is 200 points or around 200 points. Of course, you have to also account for the spread. So if it's around 200 points, then it's fine. Yeah, let's also take a look at a sell position. So here was a sell position, which is correct. Stop loss also of 200 points. Yeah, that's fine. Now what I also want to see is a take profit. So let's set a take profit of 200 here. Let's see if this also works correctly. Here was a take profit, 200 points. Let's see the take profit for a sell position. Right here. Also, around 200 points. So stop loss and take profit is working correctly. Let's also test here this close positions with a opposite signal. So for this, I will deactivate the stop loss and the take profit, and I will just turn this to true here. So now we should close the trades if we have a opposite signal. So we have a buy position here, and we should close this buy position when we have a sell signal. Of course, with these inputs, we are always in the market. So now we closed the buy position here and immediately opened a sell position. And let's see where we closed the sell position. Yeah, right here. So if I just let this run for a little bit, we can see we are just always in the market. Yeah, so this is also working correctly. And now we can do our first back tests. Okay, so maybe we start with a simple optimization here. For the euro dollar, I will use my custom symbol. I will use the 1 hour time frame. The last 10 years, or I just start in 2012 here. For this optimization, I use the open price only mode. Here now I will select fast generic algorithm, or let's just do a slow complete algorithm optimization. I will use the recovery factor max. I also showed you in the last video, I think, how to code your own optimization criteria here you can use for your optimizations. But for now, let's just use the recovery factor max. And for the inputs, let's optimize stop loss, take profit, this close, Boolean here, and the period and the input level. I know this is a lot of inputs right now. This is already like 5 inputs, which is, I would say the maximum. You should not optimize more than 5 inputs because you will just over optimize. But I just want to see, and I would prefer a combination where we, for example, don't use a take profit, for example, to reduce the number of inputs. So let's just move the stop loss from 0, which means no stop loss, 200, or let's say in 100 points steps to 2000. Here true false. This K period, let's start at 5. steps of 5 here, and let's end at 50. And here for the upper level, let's do 60, 5 and 95. Okay, these are a lot of combinations, but I think this will be relatively fast because we only trade on open ticks. So yeah, let's start this optimization. Let's see how fast we get the results. Of course, if we have a combination where the inputs are not valid, our check inputs function returns false, and we don't even waste time on this combination. For example, here when the stop loss is 0 and our close signal boolean is false, we don't get, of course, any trades, but this will not waste any time with our check inputs function. Okay, so let's just wait until this optimization is done, and let's take a look at the results. Okay, these are the results here. We can see we got a lot of combinations with a negative recovery factor, but also a few here with a positive recovery factor. So let's take a look at this best one here. This is the equity graph for this combination. Yeah, the equity looks not too bad, but I'm a little bit concerned about the number of good results here for euro dollar. So I would like to see more positive results here, because I would not take just the spike here with the best combination. So let's try another symbol maybe. Since this is a mean reversion strategy, I would bet this works better on, for example, British pound, Canadian dollar. So let's run an optimization on this pair here. Again, slow complete algorithm, recovery factor, same inputs, same steps, and yeah, let's just start this optimization and we will take a look at the results. Okay, the optimization is done. Here are the results. So we can see the top one here has a pretty high recovery factor. Overall, we can see there are more positive results than with euro dollar, and also the ratio is much better. So let's take a look at the top result here at the equity graph. So this is over multiple years, more than 10 years. Looks pretty decent, but we don't have a stop loss here. But here are also some combinations with a stop loss and no take profit, which is also what I expected for a mean reversion strategy, and a true boolean here for the close signal. So most of the time we probably just close the trades with our reversed entry signal, and in some cases we use the stop loss as a emergency stop loss, and that's nearly always how these reverse mean reverting strategies work. We have a period here of 10 for the K period for the stochastic indicator and a level of 95, which also seems pretty consistent here. So a high level is much better than a lower level. So let's take a look at this combination here, for example. Also pretty nice equity graph. This one here. Yeah, also nice equity graph. But you can see there are a lot of combinations with a good result here. Okay, and I just tested this also on a lower time frame. So this is a result with over 2,000 trades. And I have some ideas in mind to improve this result, to create a intraday trading strategy in the next part. Also let me know in the comments which component we should add to this EA. And if this video was helpful for you, it would be nice to just leave a like. And I see you in one of the next videos. Bye bye.